Hey, my friends, welcome to the first of 5 days of manifestation, timeline shifting, and quantum leaping content drops here to motivate you and inspire you and get you quantum leaping into the timeline that you desire to experience for yourself. Today, I want to talk to you about the truth about quantum leaping. Because it's one of those terms, right, that we hear about a lot. We hear quantum leaping frequently. It's bandied about, thrown around. I remember one woman that I worked with, she referred to it as kind of like a sexy term, like it sort of hooks a lot of our attention and grabs us and pulls us in because we really like the idea of being able to make a huge jump, leaving behind old timelines and old versions of reality that we don't want to be experiencing anymore and moving into one that ideally we would love to be experiencing with like star eyes, like massive career success and so much money and the love of our lives and all those things. And so quantum leaping can kind of get used in a sort of like a marketing way to grab people's attention. And I want to speak into what it really is through the lens of my perception, my own personal experience quantum leaping, as well as my observation of other people quantum leaping, and give you some like grounded, tangible understanding so that you can do it yourself if you decide that you want to. Because let me tell you, quantum leaping is not for the faint of heart, okay? So essentially what quantum leaping is, and I know I've shared this before, but I'm going to repeat it anyway, just in case nobody's heard me talk before and this is your first time ever hearing me, which is probably not the case, but whatever. Quantum leaping is where you are on your starting timeline and you basically skip all of the middle timelines that exist in between yourself and the one that you want to go to. You just like jump right over them and jump into the timeline that you desire. It is, that's why we call it a quantum leap, right? Because it's like skipping all these in-between steps. It's kind of like, to give an example, it would be like being at the bottom of a massive staircase and then all of a sudden being at the top of the staircase without having to climb every stair in between. That's what a quantum leap is. And it's absolutely possible and people do it. And I have experienced it myself and I have witnessed other people experience it. Normally what we're doing, we're timeline shifting all the time, like in every moment, the same way that we're manifesting in every single moment. It's impossible for us not to. All the timelines coexist. We could call it beside each other. Like they're within proximity. My favorite analogy is to use the analogy of a multi-lane highway, which I know I've used before, but I just think that it's the best one that I've found, where if you're in the left lane and you want to go into the right lane, you pass into the next lane closest to you, and then you pass into the next lane closest to that one, and you make all the passes through all the lanes until you are in the lane that you want. Quantum leaping would be like going from the left lane to the right lane. It's like those crazy drivers, that you see them make a crazy lane change and you're just like, whoa. I don't have nerves of steel like that in terms of actually driving. But anyway, so normally we're shifting into the next timeline that is beside us and we're making incremental shifts. So the timelines that we are moving into are barely detectable in their differences from the previous one. We do detect differences, but they're less noticeable, they're less striking, and they're easier for us to explain away. We feel it as a smooth transition, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Whereas quantum leaping involves quite a lot of chaos because you are going from one timeline into another. And obviously, when we think about timelines, we tend to think about the circumstances that are playing out in those timelines. So obviously a quantum leap would be like, well, we could use winning the lottery as an example. Winning the lottery is a quantum leap where you go from living an experience of, maybe like poverty or an experience of being tight on money anyway, in debt and living paycheck to paycheck, whatever, to all of a sudden having more money than you have ever had, possibly more money than anyone in your family has ever had, in like at your disposal all of a sudden. That would be like a quantum leap. It's a massive, massive shift. It's a huge change. And the story of the way that it plays out is through the lottery, right? Like, because we always have to have a story. There's always going to be a story. You're always going to have an experience that sort of smooths that transition for you so that it's not as abrupt as literally, being on one timeline where your partner has red hair to being on a timeline where your partner has black hair and is a totally different person and looks totally different with no explanation in between. Like, our brains are not built that way. That's not how it's going to work. We are going to experience a story that shifts us along into that place. But a quantum leap is a huge shift in a short amount of time, and it involves quite a lot of chaos. So we tend to think about it in terms of the circumstances that are changing. But what we don't often think about is the actual vibrational difference between the timelines that we are leaving and the timeline that we are arriving on if we're quantum leaping and we're skipping all the in-between steps. A lot of times when you're quantum leaping, you'll experience, like, sometimes that's where you experience those weird tones in your ear. You can experience things like vertigo, sudden unexplained nausea, like a sense of dizziness or whatever, unexplained headaches, just like physical symptoms of having to adjust to a new vibrational frequency that you didn't previously, you can't previously account for. For example, right now I'm in the process of quantum leaping, and yes, it is a process, even though it looks from the surface like, bam, it just happens out of nowhere. Actually, it's preceded by a whole bunch of tiny little changes and tiny little actions. So I'm in the process of quantum leaping right now, and I have gone through some weird shit in the past couple weeks. I just quantum leaped, I shared somewhere here, wherever, I can't remember where I shared it, but on last Monday, I had a huge piece of my manifestation come in, and to me, it felt like a quantum leap. And again, I can't share the specifics because it involves other people who I love and I respect their privacy. I don't want to talk about our stories and things like that on social media. But also, I kind of prefer to not share with you the details because I don't want to make it about the things. Do you know what I mean? It's not about the thing. Like when I'm talking about manifestation, the thrill is not in obtaining the thing. The thrill is in being like, I am a master of the matrix. I know how this realm works. I can fucking do it. That's the thrill. And that's what I want to sell you on, so to speak, rather than the blingy thing, because everybody's bling is going to be a different thing anyway. So anyhow, on Monday, the 11th, I experienced a huge, to me, it was a quantum leap. Preceding that quantum leap, let me tell you, I had unbelievable tooth pain with no explanation. None. My teeth are still alive. I don't have any cavities. I had just been to the dentist 3 weeks prior and had all like an insane number of x-rays. It was kind of ridiculous, honestly. So I know that I don't have any cavities in those teeth. There was no infection, there was no heat, there were no other symptoms, but I almost was starting to think that I had something called trigeminal neuralgia, which is the trigeminal nerve is the one that feeds into your face, and some people apparently experience a syndrome where they just have unexplained shots of pain. It eventually went away, but there were 5 days where it felt like white hot needles radiating through both of my teeth, through my tongue, into my ear. It was unbearable. And it would wake me up in the middle of the night, and I would just sit there and be like, for, until it passed. And I didn't know how long it was going to be there. It was crazy. And then one day it was just gone. It was nuts. And I would call it 110 out of 10 pain. I can't even put words to it. I have given birth 3 times without medication, and I have very painful births. So I'm no sissy when it comes to pain levels. It was wild. Again, no explanation. I just went to the endodontist last week. They can't find anything. There's no explanation. And then just as that pain was leaving my body, I started to experience this. The only way I can describe it is as deep muscle pain in my back and in my core, around my spine and my rib cage, but it was like really deep, like nothing you can touch with your hands from the surface, like whatever, the deepest layer of muscle around my organs was spasming. And it was not 110 out of 10 pain. It was maybe like 7 out of 10 pain, but it was like my whole back would just kind of arch and feel really weird. And I was just like, what is happening? No explanation for a couple days, and then it was gone. But the whole time it was happening, I actually knew that it's because I was quantum leaping and I was passing through so many timelines at such a high speed and having to adjust to a new vibration. The vibrational rate of different timelines is real. It's very significant. It's like going from one octave on the piano to another octave on the piano. Like, they correlate, and yet there is a difference in the vibrational rate. Another way that it can play out is through a lot of chaos and disruption. So if you're quantum leaping, like I said, well, first of all, if you have physical illness, like predisposed physical or pre-existing physical illness, your symptoms may totally ramp up as your body suddenly massively purges a whole bunch of like vibration of disease that you were previously carrying, because presumably if you're trying to quantum leap and you have pre-existing physical disease, one of the intentions you have, I'm assuming, would be to quantum leap to a timeline where you don't have that disease. So the disease still has to leave your body. Your body is moving through all these timelines at a high speed. So suddenly it feels like everything ramps up, and it can feel really scary and really crazy. It can also play out as chaos, like suddenly relationships falling apart, somebody no longer talking to you, somebody being angry with you. Like we think of quantum leaps like, ooh, they're these great things. And they are, if you understand the whole picture of it. They are great, but the story has to change so drastically in such a short period of time that there's no real way for it to do so without a lot of chaos and a lot of unexpected, just kind of unexpected drama. I remember watching this one woman quantum leap her income. So it wasn't through winning the lottery, it was through her business. And when I say quantum leap, I mean she started making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, and that was not she was nowhere near that when she started. And first of all, she did so much work to anchor her energy and call that in. Like, I got to see the behind the scenes of what she was actually having to do. So much work on her physical healing, her emotional healing, releasing of stories, a lot of somatic processing, a lot of working with different healers, and doing meditation and things like that. But then even after she quantum leapt, there was so much chaos as she adjusted to a new reality. Like it's like an earthquake, a vibrational earthquake. When you land in the new reality, especially if your quantum leap was really big, you feel disoriented. You feel like what is up? What is down? Where am I? Where's the solid ground beneath me? And it can feel very, very disrupted. And if people don't understand that about quantum leaps, I've also seen people basically accidentally sabotage their quantum leap because they didn't know how to hold the whole process. They kind of called in a quantum leap and didn't realize that all these other disruptions were going to occur, and it was going to be very turbulent and chaotic while all the change is happening. Another thing that can happen when you're quantum leaping or making significant timeline shifts is just like weird glitches in the matrix. So I also experienced a few weeks back a day where all of the whole Bell network in the town that I was in at the time. Bell is a cell provider in Canada, like a main cell provider. Like, it's unheard of that a Bell network would be down in an entire town. And apparently Bell serviced that entire town because nobody could use, like, you know, our cell was dead. We couldn't use the data. We couldn't access the internet, couldn't process any transactions. Everybody only wanted cash. And it was so weird and it caused so much chaos. And while it was happening, I was like, yeah, I'm shifting timelines. I'm quantum leaping. That's what's going on. It's very, very interesting. It can't just happen in an isolated way where you just magically get what you want without the rest of reality also having to mold itself, you know? And I think sometimes that's what we think it is. The other piece that I want to share about quantum leaping is to kind of circle back to what I said about that girl or that woman who really massively quantum leapt her income. Quantum leaps are built on sometimes a very long period of incremental change that has compounded over time. I mean, that is just the truth for manifestation period and for timeline shifting period. But with quantum leaping, it's almost like I think the part that we don't see, the invisible part, is all of that work that came beforehand that we only see the moment where it looks like everything changed. But there was so much happening beforehand. There has to be such a willingness to let go of who you think you are. You have to let go of your story. You have to let go of your grudges. You have to. You can't, like, do you understand? Your grudges are what are holding you in this timeline. Your sense of being responsible for somebody else or owing something to somebody else is what is holding you in this timeline. Your unwillingness to forgive yourself is holding you in this timeline. All of those things need to be released. Also, we have to release the sense of identity that we currently have. We have to let go of the idea that, you know, I am this person. This is how it always works out for me and blah, 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 blah. You have to completely release the idea that a certain relationship dynamic always goes this way, including the good relationships. Like, you just have to detach yourself from the current story that you're living out so that you can move into a whole different story. Otherwise, the quantum leap won't work. That's why most of us just incrementally timeline shift, which is fine. And most of the time, that's the way I prefer to do it because it's way more comfortable, way more comfortable. But we have to be able to just completely understand that this current manifestation of reality is one of infinite possibilities and it's totally optional, and like withdraw our attachment to it as though it's a fact. It's not a fact. Your current reality is not a fact. It is an option that you have opted into, probably unconsciously or semi-consciously for the most part. But it is nonetheless optional, and you have to withdraw your conviction in it. It's also preceded by a whole lot of little shifts that don't necessarily seem to correlate with the specific thing that you're trying to quantum leap into. But it's just a willingness to basically like push the boundaries of your comfort zone, a willingness to try something new, go somewhere new, eat something new. It's a willingness to scare yourself, a willingness to decline a promotion that was offered to you at a job that like you're happy, you're fairly content there, but you know it's not really what you want to do forever. And when you think about this promotion, logically it seems like a good idea because you're getting more money and whatever, but in your heart and in your energy, you're like, I don't want to be here for another 20 years. That's not actually what I want. And even if you're not trying to manifest a career change, the willingness to go with your heart and decline that promotion is what all of those things are what precede a quantum leap. A quantum leap never just happens out of nowhere. It's always you being willing to basically like piece by piece dismantle the version of reality that you're already living out, the timeline that you're already living out, and call the bluff of it over and over and over, and thereby like set yourself up to basically be transported in a dramatic fashion all of a sudden into a whole other timeline. I was watching, this is going to be, I don't know if I'm going to be able to describe this properly, but I want to share it anyway. Yesterday, I had made myself a green juice, and then I put the receptacle in the sink, like the thing that catches the juice when I've made it. And I filled it up with water, and it kind of had like a layer of foam on the top. And I was just standing there, I don't know, absentmindedly thinking about something else and kind of staring at the container full of water and juice remnants, and the foam, the little bubbles in the foam were, popping or whatever. And I really wasn't even noticing it or paying attention to it until all of a sudden, a huge amount of the foam just disappeared. It's like it reached a critical mass and the foam morphed its shape, and like it was just instantaneous, like a whole bunch of foam just suddenly disappeared in that one moment. It was very interesting. And I was like, oh, I can learn something about quantum leaping here if I, stay and observe this. So I kept watching as the remaining bubbles also were popping. And sure enough, about 2 minutes later, the same thing happened where a huge amount of the bubbles just suddenly instantaneously disappeared. It was very interesting to observe. And the importance, like the reason I wanted to share this, even though it's kind of a stupid story, is because the observation that I made was like, yep, all these tiny bubbles are popping, and they all seem to be popping randomly. There's no pattern, and they're just popping, and you don't really think anything of it. You don't notice anything about it. But suddenly a critical point is reached, and poof, the whole thing just like, in that case, the foam disappeared. Like that's the part that's a stupid analogy, but it's the same thing with quantum leaping. It seems like all these little disjointed changes are happening, all these little things, and it seems like they're not really working or, whatever. Sometimes you don't even know you're quantum leaping. I mean, people quantum leap all the time without realizing it. Case in point, there's a woman in my Facebook group named Bree who found herself pregnant with a third baby, and like luckily for her, it's good news. I'm always so excited when somebody's pregnant, no matter what. It's possibly kind of inappropriate. I need to check with them first and make sure that they're feeling positive about it. But in her case, she was feeling positive about it, but she wasn't planning that quantum leap. In her case, she was not trying to get pregnant, but what she shared was that she had been doing a lot of things like in her life, in her spiritual life, her spiritual practice, her financial practices, because it was actually something that came through around the time that I was teaching the New Earth Light Codes of Money and Wealth, which she was enrolled in. And also in the background, she was gently just imagining what it would be like to have a daughter, because she didn't have a daughter before that. And now it has been confirmed she is pregnant with a daughter. That's a huge quantum leap. Getting pregnant, especially getting pregnant unexpectedly, is a quantum leap. We aren't always, or some kind of disruptive event in our lives is a quantum leap, like a total timeline change. We aren't always consciously doing it. It's something that happens in nature. It's a natural process, very much like manifestation, very much like timeline shifting. And what we're learning to do right now is to harness that process consciously so that we can intentionally quantum leap into the timeline that we desire. Now, normally I'm not superstitious around manifestation, and I don't like get overly I don't know. I don't like to tell people to be careful what they wish for or anything like that, because I just think we already are dealing with so much fear and so much sort of anxiety that we're not doing it right, or what if this bad thing happens or whatever, that I just don't feel like it's a productive thing to then like plant that even more in so that people don't manifest. Because they're afraid of what they're going to manifest. So normally I don't say that. I'm just like, whatever, manifest. And I try to bring you into when I teach about manifestation, I really like to bring you into the core of what you're really going for. Not the thing that you think you're going for, but what you're actually going for underneath that thing. And that always seems to work, and it works out perfectly and beautifully, and everybody's really happy. So I don't feel like manifestation is a scary thing. I also don't feel like timeline shifting is a scary thing. It's actually extremely stable. It's really easy to do. It's very easy to control. And like I said, personally, I typically prefer to just timeline shift, but right now I'm just like excited to call in very significant changes. That's all. And so I am in the process of quantum leaping. But with quantum leaping, I will say there is a little bit of an element of be careful what you wish for, only insofar as it has that. Whereas timeline shifting is nice and it's controlled and it feels, fairly predictable and manageable. Quantum leaping inherently has a lot of chaos element sort of embedded in it. And if you are intentionally trying to quantum leap, that's a case where the more specific you can get about the timeline that you're trying to quantum leap into, the better. And the things that you absolutely have no tolerance for, or you're not available for, it's really good to just note those things for yourself and build them into your practice. Where, for example, like if you were trying to move across the country, let's say you live on the East Coast and you want to move all the way to the West Coast, and it's just like a dream come true for you. It's been calling you. You want to do it so much. And part of what has been holding you back is the idea that, but my kids go to school here and all their friends are here and my partner's job is here, and like I can't selfishly make them all move for me. First of all, that's a misunderstanding about reality, and it is kind of a superstition. Maybe I will record a live to bust that one. But second of all, if it's really important to you that your family feels stable, that your family unit is stable together, that your children are all feeling like balanced and well within themselves, that your partner feels respected and heard, and also that your partner feels like they have the kind of work that they want to have, then you just build that into the quantum leap that you are creating. So you're not just trying to quantum leap into a timeline where you live on the West Coast now without factoring in your family. You are factoring in your family, and you're like, no. I specifically select the timeline wherein this move is like the best move for all parties of my family, all members of my family, and they know it. It's not like one of those things where someday my kids will understand that I had to do this, but they are excited about it. They feel the possibility of it. It's like, it only brings our family closer together. It's kind of like, you have no room for drama and trauma. Those are the pieces that we have to consider when we're quantum leaping, because of that added element of chaos. And I don't really hear a lot of people talk about that when I hear people talking about quantum leaping, but it's absolutely possible. It's not just possible, it's like it's just natural. We also see it in children. Like, watch the quantum leaps in children's development. If you happen to have kids, little kids, and you notice that moment, like, one day your toddler takes their first steps, or your child says their first word. That's a quantum leap. They just went up an entire, a huge shift in their identity, a huge shift in their potential and what they can do now, their independence, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit different because it's like, it's more of a physical thing rather than a timeline thing, but it's still a quantum leap. And you can see though that that first step was preceded by many, 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 many attempts to figure out balance. Like that's all that babies ever do. Like that's literally their mandate. Their sole focus is like mastering the next thing. That they don't get discouraged. They don't give up and quit. They're just like, no, I gotta walk. I gotta walk. That's what I'm doing. I'm gonna walk. And they just try and try and try and try and try. And all of those muscles in their body are adjusting. The little cilia in their ear that determines balance is adjusting. Like all parts of themselves are adjusting, learning to adjust in preceding this quantum leap. It's the same way for us. It's the same way for us in manifestation, in timeline shifting, and in quantum leaping, where we have to do all of that little bit of work and all that changing, all that preparation so that we can hold the energy of the quantum leap, so that we can actually do it. It's not like this passive thing that you just wait for and hope for and wish for, that suddenly your reality is going to drastically change without you having to do anything. No, you have to prepare yourself for it. You have to think about it as though it's already done, and like what changes would you be making in your life if it was already done? How would you be changing yourself if it was already done? Now, there was one more thing I wanted to say about quantum leaping too. Damn it, what was it? It was literally just in my head and then it disappeared right now. Shit. I don't remember. Maybe I'll read some of the comments and that might help me to remember. Mike, you just said, literally just watched the trailer for season 2 of Quantum Leap Reboot. I didn't even know that was a show. I'm going to have to check that out. Damn it. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say, but that's okay because I'm going to do a live tomorrow, so maybe I'll talk about it then. But quantum leaping is a beautiful process and you're totally able to do it. You have to decide if it's what you want to do or if you want to take the more incremental, gradual path. And by the way, also, the funny thing is that shifting incrementally through timelines, like through the next neighboring timeline and the next neighboring timeline, also doesn't necessarily mean that it takes longer. It's more just like, or significantly longer. You know, it's not going to take years, whereas a quantum leap takes months, for example. It's more just like, it's a different strata of navigating things. And I think it depends on your personality. If you're somebody that is a bit of a daredevil and, you know, a little bit of like, yeah, you just like to kind of play on the razor's edge. Like you like to play with the element of chaos and you trust yourself to be able to roll with the punches. It's also a little bit, a way I could describe it too, is it would be sort of like if you were on a train that is moving super fast and there's a train beside you that's moving super fast and, you know, there's open box cars and say they're moving in the same direction, right? So there's another car that you can jump into, you know, across, and there's like the empty space, the gap in between. If you successfully jump into that other train, even though it's going in the same direction, the speed that it's going is different. Like you won't just land and stick that landing like a trained gymnast, you know? Like you're going to land and you're probably going to fall on the floor and roll around and feel super disoriented and super dizzy. And that's what quantum leaping feels like. It feels like a whole shit ton of change all at once. Some of it is the change that you wanted to experience. A whole bunch of it is the change of your old story rapidly dissolving and a new story like downloading into your program. Because ultimately, the thing that I love about manifestation, for me, it really isn't about the stuff at all. It is about that wizardry, and it's about like understanding how this realm works and being able to play within it with a degree of dexterity and deftness that feels kind of like, I don't know, exciting. And what I understand is that this is all a holographic reality. You could also understand it as like rapidly ejecting a whole storyline. Like if you imagine that we are asleep somewhere and we're plugged into this simulation, it would be like rapid ejecting of the old story and plugging in of a new story. That would cause a whole bunch of chaos within your internal psyche where the old story is leaving and the new story is coming in as it plays out. That's what quantum leaping is. You can definitely do it. You can definitely dramatically change your reality very quickly. And it is also chaotic. Yes, I remember the thing I wanted to say. The other piece about quantum leaping that I feel is important to touch on is that a lot of the time when we think we want to quantum leap, it's because we want to escape our current reality. That's never going to work. Because if you want to escape your current reality, that means that you believe this current reality has power over you, because otherwise, why would you want to escape it? You can definitely not prefer your current reality. You can definitely acknowledge, like, this isn't really the one that I want to be in. I would like to be in a different one. But there's a difference between sort of the desperate desire to escape versus like, I'm tired of this one. I want a new one. Let's go in that direction. When you want to escape your current reality, really what's happening is you're trying to ignore it, but it's bothering you a lot. And because it's bothering you, you're feeding a bunch of energy to it, and you're kind of stuck in this loop where that's the reality that you're manifesting. And then meanwhile, you're trying to tell yourself that you're in the process of quantum leaping into a different timeline, but you're not going to get there because you're still feeling disempowered to this reality. So you have to just make your peace with the reality that you're in and just decide you don't love it. You don't really want to be here. It's not the one that you want. It's not the one for you anymore, but it's just not. That's it. It's just very neutral. It's like, I just don't want. It's the same as if I decide I don't want to wear this shirt anymore, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, this shirt. I just don't want to wear this shirt. Oh God, I hate this shirt. This shirt is killing me. I just want to have a new shirt on. I would just be like, I don't want this shirt on anymore. And I would just take the shirt off and put on a different shirt. It's the same level of neutrality that's required in order to quantum leap. Yeah. Okay. Final summary piece is whereas timeline shifting is the slower, more controlled dismantling of the story that exists in your previous timeline and replacing pieces of it with a new story that is going in the direction that you ultimately want to be in. Quantum leaping is the rapid detachment from the story that you've been living, all the disorientation that causes because you've been deeply identified with it, as we all have. We're all deeply identified with the current reality we're living. That's why we're living that current reality, because we're identified with it. So it's like you rapidly dissolve your identification with it. You dissolve that old story and then you rapidly replace it with a new story. And those stories are pretty fucking different. And so it causes all kinds of internal chaos while you adjust, which then mirrors itself in external chaos because everything outside of you is a reflection of everything that is inside of you. So everything out there is just going to mirror what's going on in here. So it's your internal chaos. If you do want to quantum leap, the best thing that you can do is in your quantum leaping practice, and as you take all the little actions of detaching from your old story, also really bring into your body and your nervous system feelings of safety, security, stability, the feeling of stability and like solid ground beneath you. Like bring that element consciously into your process. That will support you as you quantum leap into a whole other timeline. Okay. That's my little bit and piece today. I hope that it serves you. I hope that it inspires you. I love you so much. And I will be back here with another live on the topic of manifestation, timeline shifting, and quantum leaping tomorrow. Bye.